Tamid, 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 Echad. Tamid, 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 Echad. Echad, 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 Tamid. Echad, 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 Tamid. Always and forever, always and forever, always and forever one. Always and forever, always and forever, always and forever one. I one, forever one. Always and forever one. One, forever one. Always and forever one. You raised a good question. I'll start with that. Into whose domain am I entering when I come to the shul? So let me go back prior to buildings that we have here and being in touch with some places like Native Americans, indigenous Americans would be saying, this is a sacred mountain. When I was in Hawaii, there were certain places that they were saying these are sacred places. People talk about them as chakra points on the planet. And when you get there, there is a certain kind of uncanny feeling that says that you're moving into somebody else's domain, somebody else's place. What's so wonderful is that in Europe there used to be shuls like that you saw the Ner Tamid over the Aron Kodesh. You had the sense, you wouldn't talk. And it was very clear, there were signs, Asur ledaber, you mustn't be speaking in shul about anything else. But there was another element that had to do with the Beit HaMidrash, where people would come and study, and they would also daven in the Beit HaMidrash. And they would also take a snack in the Beit HaMidrash and say L'chaim in the Beit HaMidrash. So before long, it was seen as social space in which you can do what you need to do. So it didn't have that uncanniness to it. It still is around, or was around, before Vatican II, a lot more. And some churches, that when you walked into a cathedral or something, you'd walk on tiptoe, you'd have a sense there is a presence there. Earlier in the temple in Jerusalem, you certainly had that sense that the closer you came to the Kodesh Kodeshim, to the most holy place, to the Sanctum Sanctorum, that you would be very, very on tiptoe. That was a place you got closer, only the Kohanim could go further, because they had to have a greater amount of ritual purity and so on and so forth. There was that sense. And then over there, way up there, was the Holy of Holies, where the Kohen Gadol would go there only once a year. And now you can imagine what must have been like for the Kohen Gadol to go in, that they had to tie him on his legs with a golden chain, that in case he would expire, die, coming in there, they could pull him out because they were not permitted to go in. So you have a real sense of what that holy turf was about. For us, it doesn't work so well that way anymore, especially since a lot of the stuff that we have done in Jewish renewal is in living room congregations. We've gotten people together to sit in a circle and to do that. A different kind of social atmosphere is set than the hierarchical Apollonian thing where, it was so distant and so far away. So what can you do? The answer is it depends what you're going to do at home before. If you have created for yourself, inside of yourself, a place, then when you come there, you still got your place with you. You brought it along. And last sessions I was talking about what I call the lonely place inside of us. That's the place where we go to when we are hurt, sad. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. You go into that place. And you don't want people to come into that place where you have, I'm talking psychology now, where you regress to much more primitive levels of awareness and life, to people to come in and to trample there and to diss your holy place. So you don't let people into that. Only very, very good friends are you going to share with such intimacy what's going on in that place. But that's the place where you can invite God. And most of the people have a dark place in there. They haven't made a window, to let God in. But if you go into that place, just a little bit in the morning, like I was saying before, and you say, "Dear God, during the day, from time to time, I want to have a little, I want to have a few moments, instead of a smoke break or a coffee break, I want to have a deveikut, a closeness to God break, and I want to go into that place and just sit quiet for a little while." Then when you go to shul, it's not their turf anymore. And it's really true, because most of the time we have a sense of they're expecting something of me. But if I were to say, what is the value? I'm talking, not every rabbi is Reb Tirza, let's say, yeah? So they may have different expectations of me, but she has certainly the expectation that you will come into your God place there. And so then that's not a problem. And more in our communities, that's how it goes. I want to say something about a level of meditation that for many people sounds, that's not what meditation is about. And that came about because of the way in which Far Eastern meditation has come in. The other day I was hearing that they were afraid that certain kind of fish would come into a lake that came from outside, and they didn't want those fish to come and spoil the native habitat here. Yeah, I have the same sense about how Eastern meditation has come here, because we haven't brought it up on the Jewish side, and they haven't brought it up much on the Christian side either, despite the fact that there has been a lot of contemplative skill in Judaism and in Christianity. And I want to count also Sufism into that, because it belongs to the Western world in this case. And people haven't known it. So it came from the Far East, and therefore that is how we talk about meditation. But originally the word meditation had something to do with sound made. So the Gregorian chant is called meditaciones. Each kind of Gregorian chant is one of the meditations, which is the way in which you would do that. Another word that people used to use was rumination. Let me ruminate on that. It comes from an animal who's chewing the cud. And you know that if somebody squeezes you in a bad way, insults you or something like that, you'll be ruminating on that, right? You chew the cud, you go over the thing again. Why did they do this? What, and so on and so forth. There is a way of ruminating about those things that have to do with prayer and with meditation. So when I ask myself, have I really gotten the point that I don't have to be enslaved to anything? And I ruminate on the going out of Egypt. Nobody can free themselves alone. But if I allow God to free me, then I can get freed. And God took us out of Egypt. And everything that we have in our prayer is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, to remembering the going out of Egypt. And I begin to ruminate on that. You see, what does it mean? I take the gestalt from the story in Egypt, and I import it, I lift it from that historic place, and I import it into my life. You see what I'm saying? That is a form of meditation in which I take something. Or, what was it like when we received the Torah? When there was such a breakthrough that our minds were blown and our ego was shattered, and we were able to hear with our eyes and see with our ears. A whole other synesthesia was happening. So when I go back to that place, I can spend time on that and look at it. And that's what contemplation is about. There is another form that's called discursive meditation, in which I give myself a sermon. And I talk to myself. I say, Zalman, is this the way you want to live your life? Aren't there better things, So I have this inner conversation with myself. And when people don't have that, the likelihood is they can't steer their life either. And so you have a conversation with the many parts of yourself. Sometimes it's a council you have to call. There was a guy by the name of Jorge Gallegos who was teaching people about totems. Who are your totem animals? And every chakra has a different totem animal, as it were. And you call them together and you have a conversation with them. I have to make a decision. Will the wolf agree with me? Will the lion agree? And that's how he went. So when we have carved out that inner space, we can then look at a series of ideas, and very often we can just lift them from the prayer book if we want, because when you take Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, you are before there was a world, you are now that there is a world, you'll be after no more world, and all this is now, and I am with you in this, and you can spend time sinking into that thought a lot. What happens is that when you do that, it isn't only in your head. You can bring it to your heart. Pictures is so amazing. The internet is such a joy in a way. People are sending me all kinds of beautiful things. So there was a new telescope that took pictures of galaxies. And I tell you, it was so busy. We think of space as being empty. Oi, is it a busy place? And what is in there? And then when I allow myself, like at the beginning of Star Trek, to go with that, in my meditation and to see how vast the universe is. And that I could be conscious of that vastness in which there are planets around the sun, and there's the sun around the galaxy, and there are the galaxies in the cosmos, and that's the universe, and the universe is only a spin-off of the metaverse some people talk about. You know, I spend an hour just contemplating this. It gets me into awe. And that awe is called Yirat HaRomemut, the awe that comes from the vastness, from the greatness, from the immensity of things. In each one of those cases that I spend time there, how do I do this right? And the best way to do it is to plan beforehand. So if I want to take the next hour and do that kind of a meditation, which begins in a discursive way, first I'll use words to myself, and then I'll let the words fade into images, you know, and I'll let the images impinge on me and so on. I make up my mind what I want to consider. And I like the word consider. You know, for what consideration will you make it? You know, like how much money will you get a consideration? Consideration means, what will it mean to me? You know, I ask this question. So when I have planned out, I will pay attention now to the large universe. I will pay attention how this universe is energized constantly by the divine. I will energize that I am part of the universe being energized by that, and I will go into a consideration as to what does it mean to me in my life situation, okay? Now I have my plan. And the next thing I can do is start doing it. Now, I can do it just plain, you know, and do it dry. But if I begin with a melody, a whole other thing happens. So I want to say something about music, melody, and singing and Niggunim. Most of the love songs would sound so stupid if they didn't come with a melody. I used that the other day. You're my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when guys are great. You know, it sounds silly, right? When does it sound right? When I sing it with a melody. Davening is the same way. That's why davening needs a melody. Because sometimes the words the words are not a description of how to put a motorcycle together. Remember that book that was called Zen and the Art of the Motorcycle, you know, when he was trying to describe what's quality. He was saying, I can give you a description of something mechanical, that's fine. But when I want to get to quality, it means something deeper. It means tasting it almost. It means having another kind of connection with it. So then I decide that I want to get into that place with that idea that I have and love it and know it and feel it and so on and so forth. And I begin with a melody. And depends. We have such a range of melodies, and it's a pity that ever since the late 60s, the 70s, there's been a wonderful outbreak of what I call yeshiva rock. You know, those are the melodies like no. Mi yinam metzar karasiya avavononi merchavya Now, the words and the melody don't have a connection, because it says, out of the constriction you have taken me out, O Lord. You have answered me in wideness, in expansiveness. So I need a different melody for that. But what happened was, we needed to bring the young people in. And listen, I'm not guilty of that too. I go back to the early 70s, late 60s, when I used to do a Friday night service, having it all pre-recorded, of the Nifty Levites. Nifty is a national something of Temple Youth. Those were the Reform kids. And they had a whole beautiful set of Yismechu, Yismechu. And it was time to dance these things. And so I would do it in the dark and put on a strobe and play that music. And you know what? It was a gateway. For that time, it was a gateway. But remember, this was what I call wheelchair accessible. There is a kind of spirituality that's wheelchair accessible. Like, you come into that service, even if you haven't been to a service before, you can manage it. But the trouble is that after a while, the people who have been to the wheelchair accessible services want to go a little bit deeper. And so that option often is not given to people, because we still want to be able to accommodate everybody who comes. But there is that deeper thing in which more silence and melodies that are of a different kind. I'll sing you one of those melodies that is known as the deveikut of the Tzemach Tzedek, how the Tzemach Tzedek was hugging God, okay? Oh, Ti-di-da, ti-da-da-di-dum. Oi, ti-da-da-di-dum, mam, mam. I die, lie, lie, la, la, da-da-da, I, la, la, da-da-da, I, la, da-da-da, la 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 da 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 ro da 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 ram da 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 ram da 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 ram da. You have a sense with a melody like this that you get homesick for God in it, you know? That's what such a melody does for you. It opens up the heart. And now, if you have that go together with a contemplation, then it isn't anymore a mental thing. It's something that's much, much deeper. So, I wanted to share these things with you because when you're close to melody, you come to something else that has to do with the word Teshuva. There was a Rebbe, again, this Reb Pinchas of Koretz, who said, why do people say that the Chazan is a fool? Did you ever hear that saying, the Chazan is a nar? Why do they say a Chazan is a fool? Because the Heichal Hanegina, the mansion, the palace of music, is very close to the door that leads to God. And if you are already there at the Heichal Hanegina and you don't go next door into that one, then you're a fool. So you see that the melodies are made to be able to get us to that place. I like the word regret. Regret. It has a sense I'm pulling something back. Regret. I'm pulling it back. I did it and I want to make it unhappen. Most of the time I can't. I can't make things unhappen. But that sense of regret, regression, going back, coming back, is what has to do with the word tshuva, returning to God. The sense is, what can I do? I don't want to be cut off from God. I don't want to be opaque to God. I don't want to be cut off from God. And what happens if I did something that wasn't right? Most people get into a place, I'll never be able to fix it because look what I did, But if I understand right away that this world is a world in which we are meant to learn by our mistakes, there's no other way to learn. Biologically, we can learn only from mistakes. Schools don't give you a chance to do that. They want you to learn by the transfer of information rather than by by exploring something that you try and do by yourself and see what will the results be. So that's why in physics you need labs, so you can make the mistakes and learn from them. What is a hypothesis? You go in with a hypothesis into a lab, and you make the hypothesis to be brittle. That is to say, if it works, that will be the result. If it doesn't work, that will be the result. And I'll know right away what's going on. We are made in such a way that we can't learn unless we make mistakes. The quote superego, which is a false conscience, it's not the real conscience. The false conscience says you aren't supposed to make a mistake. You know, if I go with Freud, the ego ideal says you can make mistakes, you'll learn from them. The superego says you made a mistake, for that you'll suffer for the rest of your life. When I think about what was built into the universe, it says before anything else, and the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. Right at the beginning of the Genesis story, it says that was T'shuvah, the possibility of returning, the possibility of correcting. Reb Nachman has a way of saying, if you believe you can spoil, you must believe you can fix. And that has, people don't see this as part of the spiritual ongoing work. And they think perhaps only you need it for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. But even in the middle of a regular day, there can be that moment that says, oops, okay, God, I made a boo-boo. I'd like to know how to fix that, you know. What would happen is that how much sooner we would go and apologize to someone whom we hurt if we were in that place. The same way with how we use our bodies, you know, the sense of recognizing what are the occasions of things. The Catholics used to talk about avoiding occasions of sin. If I know that donuts are not good for me, so I know where I shouldn't be going, you know. And if I've been there already and done it, then the least I can make sure is to say, okay, from now on, you know, I can program what I'm going to do, and I have choice over that. So that's the issue where Teshuva comes in. When we do something wrong in action, we need to fix it in action. You know, I'm talking about action, speech, and thought. When we do something wrong in action with an object with that has to do with activity, we have to go and fix it on that place. It can't be fixed in another place. If I have to do something to fix it of what I did in speech and in relationship, then I've got to go back to the place of speech and relationship and confront the other person. It isn't easy to do that because we always have the sense that we will be rebuffed if we go back to someone and ask him to help us, and that we want to apologize. We always have a feeling the person wouldn't want to talk to us. I have the sense that when you begin right quick and you show that this is not a ploy, that's very important. We have seen now how this goes, whether it's a governor of a state or this or that, and they do these public apologies, and you have a sense that this is strategy. You don't have a sense that this is for real. But when it is for real, when a person comes up to you and says, I'm sorry that I injured you. That's number one. Number two, if I learn to forgive another person, I don't feel so badly about going to apologize either. Because I've seen what it feels like. Yes, the first time that I say I'm sorry, it's not going to take it away. All it'll do is that I can talk to that person again. It's called slicha. It's not mechila. It's not finished yet. But I'm saying, excuse me, I did wrong. I'd like to make it up to you. That is the very first part of the apology. And with God, it's the same way too. To say, I recognize I didn't do this one right. I'm sorry. The second part is, how can I correct this? That's called mechila. And it's like a dance, you know. Machol means a dance also in Hebrew. It means like, let me look at it from the other perspective and see what it's like. I take your place, you take my place for a moment, and so we can work it out. Then there's the other part, finally, it's called kapara, that not only fixes what needs fixing, but creates a deeper relationship between the two of us afterwards. And so that's why it's called Yom Kippur, because by that time we have done slichot beforehand, on Rosh Hashanah Mechila, and on Yom Kippur is Kippurim, is to go and deal with the deepest part. So when we have a recognition of our basic fallibility, and we have a sense that God has programmed us, that we should be able to make mistakes and learn from them, and that we are being supported by that, then when we feel the regret, it begins to work. It won't change anything unless we become aware of our motives. You know, I may say I'm sorry, I may go through all kinds of things with a person, but I have to check out, what was the motive? What was the trigger that got me to say that nasty thing, you know? Where was I coming from at that point? What was my pain that I had from before? Unless I dig a little deeper, then Teshuva isn't going to be real. Then it's only going to be an outer part. Because if I don't know the motivation, I won't know what the problem was, and I'll repeat it most probably because I haven't found it yet. The thing that is really important is to recognize that if I have to go and apologize to someone, that I'm not going alone. That God is going with me. I have to have the sense of I won't be able to make any of these amends that I have to make unless I get the help. Because remember, we are made fallible, and if we are made fallible, then even the apology will be fallible. If I want it to really work, I have to draw on that. So now we go back to what we were talking about, the wink before, and the secret and the connection. I'm done with what I can do today, unless you have a couple of questions, and then we'll finish. No? Okay, so mazel and bracha, everybody. And we'll do it some other time again, let you know when.